Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and welcome to It's Okay to Be Old, a show about all things aging well. Well, back by popular demand, my guest today is Judge Dominic Yezzo. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He's a wounded Vietnam veteran, a retired administrative law judge, a lawyer, an author, a professor, a father, a grandfather, and a seasoned public speaker who continues to work tirelessly as an advocate for veterans' rights. Welcome, Dominic.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
So today, April 30th, marks the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War in 1975. And we did a show last year to talk about your experience as a wounded Vietnam veteran, and it was very well received. So I invited you back because I'm so thrilled to have you here and also to talk about this. At the time, you opened up your life and your heart to us and shared what it was like to be there at the height of the conflict. And I encourage all of our listeners to go back and listen to that show. It's very informative and very moving. But today, Judge Yezzo, we're going to give our listeners a history lesson. So, I want to talk a little bit about your thoughts, but I want to open this up with a really loaded question. Why were we there in the first place?
Well, you opened up with the most difficult question to answer. First off, once again, thank you for having me. I sense and feel that I'm representing many, many, many men and women who served in the Vietnam War from early 1965 through our departure in 73 and beyond in 1975 when the war ended. But the heartache, the ironic hardship of that war is that question is still debated. We as veterans feel that the administration under Johnson, President Johnson at that time, lied to us. There was something that was never ever answered. There was something that was never clear about why we put troops there. There was the talk about communism. That I remember the phrase and the rhetoric was the domino effect. If Vietnam became occupied by the North, which was a communist regime, then the communist takeover of all of Southeast Asia and further would affect that part of the world in a way that harmed the United States of America. But it was all rhetorical. None of it was clarified or ever made sense. We did go to join a democracy, which was to a country that was split down the middle, the way many are. Vietnam was divided amongst families, the same way the United States was divided in the Civil War. There were men and women who were in the same family of opposing thoughts and who believed in opposing sides, who were against each other. And so a line was drawn the same way it was drawn in the United States, the same way it was drawn in Korea and other places. And the North was dictated by a communist regime led by a man named Ho Chi Minh. And the South was dictated and the ideals of democracy were applied by the United States and its regime, and that capricious South Vietnamese democracy, which was up and down and in and out. And so it was nation against nation, and we were the simplest answer is that we went there to protect the democratic ideals of South Vietnam.
So, in a nutshell, how did the Americans and the other supporting countries benefit from the Americans being there for 20 years?
Well, prior to the Americans being there, the French were there, and the French had set up in Saigon, was known as the Paris of the Orient. The French set up the way they do everywhere.
Everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Very, very French. It was comfortable. It was Parisian and in an Asian kind of way, and sort of beautiful. The war was away from Saigon, where the French had set up, and it was It was applied through a French eye. French were ultimately defeated in the north at Dien Bien Phu, which was a surprise, and that happened in 1954. And after that defeat, the concepts of the land were governed by Ho Chi Minh, and he had a communist mentality. He studied in the United States, and he was not a bad person, I think, what I know of him and what I read about him. Nonetheless, he thought that his country should be sharing its profits, and he thought that that would be a better way to govern. Um, of course, you and I know that communism doesn't work, that sharing never gets to where the labor is, that it's another way to exploit hardworking people. And so, but I don't think, I think it was an idea, and the South began to hold on to its democratic appeal, and we were attracted to managing what they were holding on to for both economic and social and political reasons. And so we sent the first troops there in 1965.
Oh,
And
okay. I thought it was a little earlier than that. But if this question makes sense, who tipped the Americans off to the fact that they needed help? How did that even, that was not, it's not like the world is today where everybody knows what everybody's doing 24 hours a day.
well, I don't think that's true. I think they knew everybody knows what everybody's doing. That we have ambassadors all over the world. And we had, even though we didn't have troops there in 65, and in the early 60s and earlier in the late 50s, we had advisors there to advise the Vietnamese how to maintain themselves. And we had propaganda forces there to train the people in the ideals of democracy, and to institute their own constitution, and to make the appeal of democracy, and all that comes with that, in free trade, in ability to gain economic success for hardworking men and women. All of that was part of what we presented to the Vietnamese, and they wanted our protection. They wanted our big brotherness. And so we went there to protect that, and not that we were tipped off, or anybody's ever tipped off. Everybody knows what's going on everywhere. Just you and I are not tipped off unless
Yeah,
you read
yeah, yeah, yeah.
unless you read the incident report every day that the president gets, right? But those things come into the White House and to the intelligence factors of Congress on a regular and consistent basis, hourly. And now even minute by minute with the kind of technology that we have now. So the tip-off was something that was political and not dramatized until we started to get troops there. And then there was that Gulf incident, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was on the front page of all the newspapers, where we deployed the jet planes, and we were at war. It was an incident that was significant. How could somebody try to attack one of our aircraft carriers in 1964, 63, whenever that happened? There was that.
Right.
And then we
20 years and 58,000 casualties later. You're at 1975, right? Were the Americans forced to retreat, or did they just run out of resources and support? What does it mean to lose a war? They call it the fall of Saigon, but it's
stop.
much.
We didn't lose that war. We gave it away. We won the war in 1969, and that's an insult to Vietnam veterans. It looks like we lost the war because we retreated. There was an unpopular war. The nation was in turmoil. The United States of America was split, not the way we're split now. We were split in terms of ideology. There were people who were standing up, who meant it, who said, why are we there? There was the change in music. There was a change in culture. There was all of that protest for our own troops, our own involvement, our own sufferings. Why were we there? And then that question that you asked me, everybody was asking then. And the war changed not because of the hippie movement or because of flower children or because of the pressures which were real on the government of the United States. Those pressures were real. But the war changed when Main Street mom and pop, whose son came home in a basket, whose son came home dead, whose son came home wounded. And those parents started to say, what are we there for? What does this mean? What are we doing? Why is my son, I gave that boy away and he comes home dead. For what? And it was that voice of America that caused Nixon to assert an issue where we give this war back to the Vietnamese. So our troops started to leave in 72. I was there in 1968 and 69. I was there at the height of the military presence. There were 500,000 soldiers there. But thereafter, in 70, 71, 72, the war was raging. And then in 72, there was enough dissension at home and enough pressure on the government. They couldn't answer those parents who lost their children. And the government began to form a structure for the American departure. And we left advisors and other persons there who could train the Vietnamese to maintain their own democracy with our help, with our technical support, our support with weaponry, our support with advisors, that sort of thing. And so we left. I think we pulled our troops out last troops in 73, and Saigon fell in 1975. This is the moment of it, 50 years later. And Saigon fell terribly because the North Vietnamese soldiers, not the Viet Cong, but that North Vietnamese army that came down south in mass. It was a real army. That was a very well-trained and very well-equipped army. They came south, and when first Da Nang fell, which is kind of north and west and on the coast, north and coastal, not west, east, on the east coast there. And when Da Nang fell, then the country started to fall apart, and they drove right through the Saigon. It was brutal. It was awful. But we were there in like embassy, like the Marines were at the embassy guarding the embassy. The airport, Tan Son Nhut Air Base was bombed, so we couldn't get planes in and out. We had to leave from the embassy so that great picture, that photo, that image of the last helicopter rising up and people trying to hold on to its skids is the way it looked like the war ended. It looked like we were retreated, but we were out of there long, long before that. And we gave this to the Vietnamese to manage themselves, and they couldn't do it.
You know, what's astounding to me, Dominic, is the number of Vietnamese immigrants who came here and flourished. We've talked about this. My question's kind of 3 in 1 almost. So how did the Vietnamese benefit was kind of like my basic question from the Americans being there. A lot of ways, right? So why did they hate us after what happened? How come they don't hate us?
Well, we don't hate them either.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
People. When I've returned to Vietnam twice, and I was stunned at how welcomed I was. I'm appreciative, as I was when I was a soldier, even though I was in conflict. I was in war, I was in battle. But I was stunned at my return at how friendly the Vietnamese people were to us. They didn't dislike us. We were an occupying army in a country that is an Asian country. It's special. It's not Chinese. It's not Filipino, and it's not Korean. It's Vietnamese. It has its own dignity. It has its own style. It has its own mark on culture. It has its own ancient rituals and rites. It has its own beauty. It has its own struggles. Different. It was theirs.
Yep.
Thailand has its, Laos has its, Cambodia has its. This is a special place, right? Like every place is special. And we occupied, and we were powerful, and we were there from the DMZ all the way down through the Mekong Delta in force, lock, stock, and barrel. And so they don't they the theory was that they loved us for our presence. But how could you love an occupying army that sets up camp next door to the school where your children trying to learn how to read and write? How could you adore an occupying army that sets up its camp and its base next to the village where you've been fishing for 500 years, as your father did before you and your grandfather before him? It's difficult.
Huh?
Our munitions, our men, our needs, our hunger, our great machines, helicopters, tanks, artillery, soldiers from Mississippi, Chicago, and New York City walking around in your churchyard.
Right.
That's what it's like. That's what war is like. Uh,
That leads me, Dominic, to want to ask you a little bit, if you don't mind, about your personal experiences there, because I think that this is a very important part of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the history lesson, because I, like many other people, are not well informed about this. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this show is to open up that conversation so that that we have the correct history, and that young people and old people and, you know, your predecessors and the people that are going to come after you know what happened there and what's truth, because there's a lot of misconceptions about it. We've talked about this. So I want to ask you about your personal experience. What was your worst experience while you were in Vietnam?
trying to talk about it after I came home. That's the worst experience. No, I'm teasing, but
I know you were wounded.
yeah. That's a very difficult. God bless you for that question. It's a very difficult question to answer because I had a mindset of respect. I came from a respectful household, and so I respected other households.
Right.
And even though we were at war, the places that we occupied, and I had a very good vision of it because I was in a unit that was headquarters company of the 1st Air Cavalry Division, G5, which is Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations. And so my vision of the nation and its people and the reparations that we tried to make for the harm that not that we caused, but that the war caused, that we tried to correct immediately. I had a vision of that. I had a vision of how important a water buffalo was to a small family, because we took out veterinarians and went out to the countryside and befriended the village chiefs, and would with the veterinarian, we would examine the water buffalo and give it inoculations and show them some things about how to maintain the health of this creature. And they appreciated that. If there was something damaged in a battle, like one of their citadels or even a small hut, we would try to pay reparations. We would also bring rice out that we captured from the North Vietnamese or from the Viet Cong. We'd bring it to the village and say, we captured this is all for you. And we'd bring out tons of it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that a lot of that rice we recapture because it was taken from them or given away to the North Vietnamese or the Viet Cong at subsequent times. Part of the irony of what we were doing there. But my vision of the Vietnamese and of what we were doing there and why we were there was predicated not so much on shooting the rifle, although I did many times, but was on looking at what the war did and what we were trying to do in terms of leaving our brand, leaving our indelible American mark for democracy, for the Constitution of the United States of America, and for the kind of power that they could enjoy if they formed and protected their own democracy. And we do that in little ways, which filtered up into big ways. So people would say the Americans would pay for that. Sometimes it was hardship because a child might have been harmed or worse, or something destroyed that couldn't be replaced because it was 800 years old. That sort of thing, which is the incident of war. That's war. That's it. And we don't know that in America because we only experience what war with the towers coming down, which was god awful. It was biblical, but we don't know that, and anybody who wasn't in New York doesn't understand what happened there. But the war is it's fought next to the place where a mother is changing the diaper of her infant. That's what war is. That's what it's like. That's what it does. And don't ever forget, it's about the destruction of people and property. And my vision there, because I was in PSYOPs, which is Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations, my vision of the war was special, just like every soldier's vision is special, or
So,
every doctor, every grunt, every person carrying a rifle, every person driving a truck who's in the Army, in the Marines, in the Air Force, every person doing a job, their own vision is their own. You could stop any veteran, ask them to tell you something about Vietnam, and they're going to tell you something that nobody else knows.
and I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that, you have these horrible experiences going on around you, but the good experience is that you help them, and you hope, God willing, made a difference in their lives. And that's what I was. What was the most rewarding part of being there?
Oh God bless you for these questions. The reward is now. It's not. There's no reward in war. War is wrong. It's morally wrong, but may be necessary sometimes. It's big. Those are big questions. The most rewarding part of being there was was hardship, coming through hardship, which you don't know then. You can't wait to return home to safety and peace. The mind at 19 or 20 years old is shaped indelibly by a war. The war is horrible. It's about destroying people and property. It's about winning without relenting. You got to win. You don't lose. It's so the reward is not. We can't think of war in those terms. Not at my level. The reward is saving myself from the hardship of post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, so that I could prepare myself to function afterwards, like many soldiers need to do, is the reward. And it's a terrible beauty. It's not something I could say, oh, the reward is that the people were nice. No, or the reward is that I weighed 165 pounds. Or the reward is no, that's not it. I had the best rifle in the world. That's not the way to think about this. The reward is enduring the understanding that war, which I thought that war was going to end all wars, like they did in World War II. But there have been so many afterwards, and that's part of the reason I serve veterans now, with a large part of my efforts, my professional and personal efforts go toward veteran concerns a lot. But the reward is enduring the hardship and and knowing that I can carry this as an experience of life, experience of that moment in time, and that lets you think that there were others thousands of years ago who carry that hardship. How many of us carry all of the hardships of war, and how many have? How many will? What will our children endure? It's the ability to endure is the reward.
I'm going to given a choice. Would you do it all over again?
Ay. These are California questions. so so would I do it all over again? I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't choose it. I didn't choose that. They were
Okay,
drafting.
that's why I'm asking, given a choice.
Yeah, they were drafting 19,000 a month in 1967, 68, and 69. 19,000 a month.
I just read a statistic. There was 2.7 million young boys that served in Vietnam, all
Yeah,
told. So
yeah.
that's an astounding number. That's astounding. So
And 58, 57 high died, were
yes,
killed,
yep.
slaughtered. And I was near several of them. And so many of us were wounded. Like, and that's a stat nobody pays attention to. But there are hundreds of thousands of wounds. And what did we inflict? Our percentages for death were minor compared to the death that we caused, that we did. And you carry that. So your heartache, the heartache that lasts is enormous. But your question is almost unanswerable at this level. And I believe that one of the great things about the character of Vietnam veterans, all of us as a unit, all of us, is that we turn the nation's disrespect for us into our own honor. And now we're honored. And I want you to know that the reward is what I'm doing now. We are the organization of very, very strong legacy for our war. We're also a very, very advanced legislative body, and we have done more for veterans and their families than any other division, any other group in the history of the United States. And I mean that since Abraham Lincoln, who rewarded the soldiers that came home from the Civil War with vending permits so that they could peddle apples and teaspoons in this town square. He gave them the permits because he said we had to take care of those who bore the burden, right? He was a good man like that. He understood what was coming home is not what we sent away. So that we made for ourselves, and the Vietnam Veterans of America have given more to the needs of veterans and their families than any other organization ever in the history of the United States of America. And we're still at it. And the biggest formation of that is our power as legislators. I'm a lobbyist with the Vietnam Veterans of America on occasion in Congress. And I can tell you that they stand up when we appear. They want to hear what we have to say. We're a voting bloc that they want to keep. And so the other part of it is we're on the backs of the VA. So if the VA says that Agent Orange is not a concern like they did so many years ago, we sue them. If they say no, the legislation might not pass for this, that, or the other issue, we sue them and win. And we have taken care of that need to understand toxic burn pits for the new soldiers who were who were made to breathe that smoking horror of rubber and gunpowder and metal that they burned in those pits, the same way they dumped the Agent Orange on us when they defoliated the country so that we could see through the trees. And they defoliated us. They dumped that on top of us. And so many of us struggle with it. And we don't even know what's coming. We don't even know what the result is for our grandchildren. It's something we carry. But we're on that. And we have a registry for persons who were exposed to toxins. The dioxin registry would, if you put your name in there and your children's names in there, that information is captured forever.
Oh, okay. That's good to know about. So, where would you find that information? Is there a website? Is it the Vietnam Veterans of America website? Will have a link to that.
Yes,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
And Agent Orange is you could just look that up. It's all there.
All right, we'll put that up on the link as well. Dominic, the reward is all of us have you here, and we're so grateful for your work and your commitment and just being here sharing with us, what it was like then, what it was like now. One question I have for you, do you feel safer today than you did in 1969?
Safer? No. Yes, I'm able to take care of myself. Safer, you mean generally?
No, in the world. Is the world safer? Is it what's your perception of that? I'm curious.
No, there's still conflict. We're more divided than ever. Now, when I look back at the division in the 60s in America, it was simple compared
to mild compared to what's going on now. Yeah.
It was kind of like the Beatles telling you she loves you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like kind of sweet.
Yeah.
And the protests were not so rough as now. It was really a sweetheart kind of deal in a sense. Even though divided, right? Remember, those World War II veterans who put us into the war, they threw us into the fire and they cut the cord. They didn't want to know us when we came home.
Right.
They gave us disrespect.
Right.
They didn't honor us. We gave ourselves the respect. And we came home hurt with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, what they used to call in World War II shell shock.
Shell shock, right. Mm-hmm.
Or battle fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And the war is a moral issue. You can't get away from that. It'll eat you alive many years later because you see destruction of people and property. You witness a baby's house being blown apart. You remember the bony arm of a child through the rubble of a building you just broke apart with munitions, with a rocket. It doesn't go away. You gotta carry that. You carry it, and it becomes. If there's no purpose, if you didn't save the world, if what we did was not respected upon our return, that's what we carry. That's what we always carry. We turn that disrespect into our honor. And now they honor us, and you better honor us. Because if you don't, you don't know what you're looking at. We've done more legislatively and politically and economically for veterans and their families than any other organization ever. And we understand post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury more than ever before because of the Vietnam veteran. We made PTS a household word. So much so that the psychologists grabbed onto it.
Right.
Many years later, they call it PTSD. I don't use the D. They call it a disorder. It's not a disorder. It's a soldier returning home to an ungrateful nation, to a nation that didn't understand what they sent us to. So it's not a disorder. We went there to clear the disorder. And we did a good job.
First of all, thank you for your service. And I will never think that that's enough to say to you. There are no words. Thank you and all of that you're here to tell us again. Thank God you're here to tell us about your life and that there are others who are. What one-liner? Okay.
I can't do this.
I know you can't do a one-liner. What do you want young people to know about the Vietnam War?
I want everybody to know that all war is wrong because it's about the destruction of people and property. And if you are born and grow up in a place that allows you to believe that life has a sacred base, then you got trouble when
Mhm.
you go. It's impossible not to have that trouble, and it's complicated past that. So the basic, there has to be a better way. The things and I don't want young people, to feel that being in the military is a dishonor. It's a great honor. Military structure is really special. They get it done. Um, it's kind of wonderful, that military structure, that order, that willingness, lets me know that anybody who doesn't hire a veteran is making a mistake. Veterans know how to get it done. They're mission oriented.
At any age, right? At
Yeah,
any age.
for sure,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
It
yeah.
never goes away. Part of my rocket ship is because I watched how the military worked. I didn't love it then. I love it more now. I see it now. Now that I'm a professional myself, but I was at the headquarters company, and I saw what they did, how they did it, and how impressively certain they were, and how they struggled over decisions.
Yeah.
I saw grown men, you know, colonel and above, struggling over the decisions they made, here, there, and everywhere on a regular basis. And I was 19 years old. Right. These were guys doing their job away from home, in a bunker.
So maybe the reward here is that it helped you flourish in your life.
I maybe I would have flourished anyway. Maybe not. I'm a soldier.
Yeah.
I'm a wounded soldier. I carry the mark of my nation on my chest. I'm happy about that. It's not like that. We can't put it into a one-liner.
Right.
This is at least a volume. This is at least, um, a collection of several books. This is at least a story that needs to be told.
Well,
And
that's what
it's
I'm going to share is that I have Dominic's first book, his diary, his experiences in the war, written beautifully by a 19, 20-year-old man. It's amazing. I reread it so many times. And so what's up next for you? You're looking to do another book about Vietnam.
I'd like to, yes. I actually like to have that book that I wrote, and it was published early on, after I came. It was the first book published about Vietnam in the early 70s,
Yeah.
while the war was still on. Um, I'd like to have that translated into Vietnamese, and and see if that market, for that book, is viable.
Mhm.
Uh, um, I'm busy now. I do many things. I serve as the Veterans Incarcerated Chairperson nationally with the Vietnam Veterans of America. Um, I serve on the Legacy Committee as well. It's an important aspect of who we are. We're all The average age of the Vietnam veterans is 78.
Mm.
And so, not all of us are in health. Um, and we're a very aging population, but our legacy and how we are remembered and what we have done, um, will be archived nationally in a very big way, the way we archive things that are very important in the United States of America. And so I'm working on that with, several of my colleagues, nationally, and I'm in Washington, D.C. 4 times a year, for the furtherance of what we do as an organization to serve all veterans from all wars. And we understand the younger veterans now who are turning 45 and 50, just like we did. They're starting to get it. And they're coming, but not to us, but they're taking our advices and what we created, and they're doing it in their own shape, which is significantly more technologically advanced than our shape is. It's a different, it's got a different, it's a different style. These soldiers are more educated. They understand more quickly than we did, because we left them a host of things to look at and to be careful of, with fighting the government for your rights and your benefits. But they understand what they carry, because we articulated it for them, and they can say that and get the respect of the nation. Now, when on a Veterans Day parade, it's a remarkable event. In Vietnam, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case.
Well, that's a beautiful mark that your generation and your fellow veterans will leave on this earth, is making it okay to talk about it, and bringing to the forefront the history, how it feels, how it affects humans, civilians, military, everybody, the effect it has on the whole world. Again, I can't thank you enough for being here. It's the 50th anniversary of what the fall of Saigon and everything that preceded that. And there's still so much more to talk about it. I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It's a great conversation, great importance, needs to keep going. So I look forward to any writings that you have coming up. And Dominic, again, I'm going to ask you this like we do in all of our conversations. What do you like about getting older?
It's a joy. It's the wisdom, which is a certain and constant course. If you stay certain and constant, God will give it to you. It's there. I think I'm just beginning, and I want to live till 200. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I know how to push forward where a push needs to be. And I know how to stand in line if that's what's appropriate as well. So I've learned many, many things. I've educated myself. I worked. The beauty of this is being here to speak to someone like you who cares about this. It matters. Many people don't get it. You understand that it matters, and it matters what we have accomplished. I'd like to leave you with an anecdote, if I may, about the last leadership conference that we had in Reno. There was a Vietnamese woman who was her father was in the war, and she came. Her father was able to get out at the end of 75. He was able to leave and find his way to America, right? Now, he did that as an immigrant, and his children, one of whom was this woman who spoke to us, and she's a physician in San Francisco. And it was remarkable to hear how grateful she is for what the American soldiers did for her and her family. And it never occurred to me that there are thousands of immigrants. People came in boats, and people who got out one way or the other when Saigon fell. And after that came to America, it never occurred to me that it's them. It's that woman. And if it was all for that woman, that 38-year-old physician in the United States of America, who is renowned for her medical clarity, then it serves what we did very well. It's enough.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And you're right. There's probably thousands of stories like that.
Yes.
So keep speaking to us. Keep at it. I know you will. Your energy and enthusiasm and commitment is astounding. I love it. And to be continued.
I never answered one of your questions.
No, you never answer my questions. That's okay. But you told me that you answer them in another way, so that's fine. Again, thank you so much, Judge Dominic Yezzo. Always a pleasure to have you here. And like I said, to be continued. There's more to come.
From all Vietnam veterans, thank you so much for remembering us. And it's because of your efforts and your dignity about what we have endured, that this is very special. It makes it a holiday.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you who are listening to It's Okay to Be Old. I'm Patricia Greenberg. And for more shows on aging well, please subscribe to this channel. And for more information, feedback, and topic ideas, you can contact me at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Stay well and stay safe. Thank you again, Dominic.
Thank you.